Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Brains, Bibles, and Beyond.
Beyond.
I am Nate Day, and this is Joel Willoughby.
Hello.
And we are so glad that you have joined us.
Very glad.
So come along with us as we explore worldview apologetics.
Yes.
All right, on today's episode,
Yeah.
we are going to continue our series on why do Christians disagree and hermeneutics. And we're going to be looking at spoke 5 of 7.
Yes.
So why don't everybody grab your theological receptacle and let's get started.
Juicy. Okay.
All right. So on our last episode, we finished up 3 and did 4.
Yeah.
Of the 7 spokes. And so we're going to get right into spoke number 5. This is a special episode, not a full podcast. We are just doing spoke 5 today.
Knocking this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so do make sure you watch all the episodes in order. And the spokes in the wheel, essentially, they're all taught in an order, but realistically, when you use them, you're going all over the place, different times. So going from spoke 1, you have text and context. Then number 2, comparative translations. 3, historical and cultural context. 4 is literary structure. Now 5 is biblical theology. Biblical theology. Okay.
Oh, that seems important.
So yeah, it's one of those little bit of a misnomer because, the next one we're going to talk about, not in this episode, but the next one will be systematic theology. And so some people might say, hey, make sure your theology is systematic. And then someone else might try to be a little more spiritual and say, you need to keep your theology biblical. And it's like, okay, well, it's not to say that anything else is non-biblical theology. It's just simply the idea of showing that Scripture has continuity. It flows together beautifully. There's themes and concepts that stretch from Genesis to Revelation. That's biblical theology. So you're like looking at the whole Bible in a snapshot. You're making sure that things are not disjointed, but they are connected appropriately well. Every text is a part of the whole of Scripture. You're having that mentality. So some big picture ideas that really span Genesis to Revelation. Okay. The covenants, of all the covenants, the dispensations, if you are such a one as I, the kingdom of God or kingdom of heaven, same thing, but different names. The kingdom in general. The nature and attributes of God, huge. Okay. The revelation of the Messiah. So starting in Genesis 3:15, all the way to the second coming of Revelation 19. So just him being revealed through time, and then the schemes of Satan, as you see with the first temptation, Genesis 3, all the way till he even deceives the nations when Jesus is ruling on earth. The schemes of Satan throughout the whole thing. So just big picture items like that really help us out. And I'm going to give us an example.
Okay.
Joseph, the Joseph of Genesis. This one is interesting. So let's just jump over to Genesis 39.
Okay.
And we're going to look at starting in verse 11. So Genesis 39:11. And so just kind of, I'm trusting that our audience will have a good appreciation of the context of the narrative of Joseph. That's the idea.
The favorite son, the rest of the brothers hated him, sold him into slavery. He ends up in Egypt. Right.
Yeah, basically.
Goes to prison. And there we are.
So then this would be Genesis 39, verse 11, picks it up where he's already working in Potiphar's house.
Okay.
It says, but one day when he went into the house to do his work, Joseph, and none of the men of the house was there in the house. That's a bad sign, first off. Something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
She, Potiphar's wife, she caught him by his garment, grabbed him by his clothes, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. Just ran off. Okay.
Yep.
So
that's the proper response, by the way, guys.
Flee youthful lust.
when that nasty lady tries to catch you, run for your life.
Yes. Well, spiritually nasty. I mean, I'm sure physically there was a lot of appeal there, but Joseph had a bigger picture in mind.
Yep.
So what is the interpretation and application of the text? perhaps Satan tempted Joseph, but he walked with the Lord and so ran from temptation, so we should also. What I hear a lot in a lot of Sunday school type stories, or even, some big church type preaching, is simply basically avoiding sexual immorality or how to endure temptation. That's essentially what it is. I do think that is an application we can draw from this passage, one of many. But I don't think that's the main point of the whole passage.
Sure.
So this is where we're going to strap on the helm of Bible study to navigate this sea. We're going to go through it. So we're focusing on biblical theology. So first off, what genre of literature is this? What would you say with Joseph here in Genesis?
Historical narrative.
Hey, I like that. That works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then narrative here, is it prescriptive or merely descriptive? What do you think about that one?
Well, historical narrative is descriptive.
Is there a prescriptive part in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Run away from temptation.
Yeah. So it's definitely descriptive.
Yeah.
And then there is a little bit of a prescript here saying you ought to do this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There is.
We read that and you're like, yeah, that was the right response. I can apply that to my life. So. And
then, considering we're going to study this passage here. So what context might be helpful? You can just generally speak to that. You don't have to have exact.
What context?
Might be helpful in understanding the interpretation and application of those couple verses we read.
I have no idea what you're getting at here.
Well, just think through, if you're going to study it for yourself, what would be helpful to understand those couple verses?
As far as historical description goes?
Well, history is part of it. Historical context.
Okay.
Where is that in history?
Is that what you're looking for?
Well, yeah. Broadly enough.
Where is that in history? Well,
that's one thing.
This happens, obviously, in the broader scheme. It's God's using this whole thing to bring the nation of Israel down to Egypt for a time.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
And had Joseph never gone to jail, he would never.
Well, let's stop there.
He would never have.
You're going to get ahead of me.
Wait, you said that. You said the context.
We're mentioning
where's it fit in the timeline, or
what categories of context we have to consider? So first off, history.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Now we're not going to talk about it.
All right. Okay. So the context, historical context, as in where it fits in the timeline.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Even some cultural context specifically of, why was she there? Why were none of the men there? What sort of position was he actually in? And that can kind of intensify the moment.
Sure.
When we realize what's going on here.
Because he was a slave of Potiphar, but he did such a great job. Potiphar kind of elevated him up to top slave.
Yeah.
Which at that point, you're not really a slave. You're really holding a pretty awesome place of honor.
Well, slavery, it's a broad term and it includes bond service and things like that too. But, most of the time, ancient slavery, places like Rome and whatnot, it's not the typical slavery that we grow up knowing. We know of the dark side of agricultural slavery in America, and there was some real messed up stuff within that. You end up sinning like crazy when you lose track of the idea that this is a human being bearing the image of God. There's sanctity of life. There's value, right? So when people lose that, that's when it all goes downhill. But even like in Rome and stuff, you'd have slaves that could be like doctors and lawyers and things. So it was not the same at all. Anyway, that's a side note. Side note.
Okay.
All right.
But you have the cultural context of we're in ancient Egypt. There you go.
We're on track still a little bit here. So
okay.
Then we covered this last time, literary structure. Okay, so think about this part. How many years of history does the book of Genesis cover? Give me a rough guess. The most conservative, the most conservative number of years you could use
from Adam and Eve to
Joseph
to Moses, basically.
Well, no, we're just looking at the narrative history. You know what I mean? So, narrative history, you're only going through Joseph in Genesis. even though Moses wrote it.
True.
So just the narrative. Yeah. So you have creation through Joseph's life.
So let's see. You have, gosh, how long is that? That's probably 2,500 years.
Yeah, I'd say on the most conservative end,
2,000.
you're looking at like 3,000 years at least, 3,000 minimum.
Okay, that long. Because how long is it from the flood to Jesus?
Well, so it depends on. So if you use the Usher's dates, which is the most conservative number of years, and I don't agree with all the points of history, but I don't think he's too far off. I think he's in the ballpark. And so he would have creation at 4004 BC. And then the flood was, I get them mixed up. It's either 17 or 1300 years later. I forget exactly which is which now off the top of my head. But then you got to think like Moses was leading Israel out at like 1440 BC.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's 2,600 years.
Yeah. So gives
it's
you
real close to my guess of 2,500.
I think no, yeah, 2,300.
But you got to take 400. They were in Egypt with 400 years, wasn't it? So
well,
you had 2,200 years then.
It depends on how you count. If you mean like slaves in Egypt, rounded to 400 years, yes.
So this most conservatively then would be 2,200 years span of the Book of Genesis.
It would be.
Probably, if it's 2,600 years from,
a little more than, it doesn't matter. We get the idea.
If creation was at 4,000,
yeah,
and Moses left in 1,400, that's 2,600 years. But take 400 off of that, that's 2,200.
So you have So
that would be the most conservative. So when I guess 2,500 to maybe 2,000, I was right in that ballpark. Most conservative.
Yeah. All right, I'll give it to you. We'll move on.
You can count differently if you want, but either way,
it's fine. Yeah,
you're a couple thousand years.
We're way off
of history in Genesis.
You
asked the question.
The whole point is
you asked the question.
Yeah. It's too long. So the point is there's like a few thousand years here, and the whole point is
2,000.
You look at Genesis 1 through 9, even Genesis 1 through 6, really. That's covering like 1,700 years of history right there.
Mm-hmm.
Of just those few chapters.
And this is not that long after the flood when you really look at it.
It's relative terms, right?
Well, just because of how long the first couple generations after the flood lived.
Yeah. So then you have
like the guys that got off the boat would have just been dying not long before this.
So Shem would have been alive when Abraham was alive.
Yeah. That's only a couple generations ahead of Joseph there. So
in Genesis 37, you first start hearing about Joseph. Chapter 38 takes a break. It's a Judah and Tamar deal, which is very relevant, actually, but that might be another talk of how that fits exactly. But then you pick it up back in 39. So basically, Genesis 37 through 50, minus one chapter, you have just Joseph. So why is it that less than 100 years gets like triple the time as
it was important for some reason?
So this is biblical theology.
He's really setting the stage for the Exodus, obviously, but why is it more important than that?
Yeah, so it becomes like just because of the way the literature is structured, I understand that the most important takeaway from the whole book of Genesis is the life of Joseph.
Okay.
That can be argued, I'm sure, but just as far as time spent, right, he becomes the most important figure. So then we think about more context. Okay, so when we think about history, Moses writes to wandering Israel. So whenever scripture is being written, you always have to think, what is the goal of the author to communicate? What's the goal like for the audience to do or change? To some extent, there's always a response, a desired response coming from the original readership. And so what was that Moses was trying to communicate to wandering Israel when he wrote Genesis? Okay, so that keep that thought in your head. And then we've talked about this before, but Who is the hero of every narrative? It's God. God is. The whole Bible, right? But we're just, narratives are easy to get confused because we have Samson as our hero, David, Moses is our hero, and we're missing the point.
Yeah, some subplot heroes.
Yeah, yeah.
But there is an ultimate goal of the Bible.
So already we know that with the story of Joseph, or the narrative of Joseph, Joseph's not actually the hero of the story.
God is.
Which is, it's hard for people to swallow that down sometimes, when we have that famous story of Joseph running from Potiphar's wife, we really easily make him the hero, and this is the model. We need to be like Joseph.
Sure, and that's an application you can make out of it.
It is a good application, but it's not the primary.
It's not the point of the story.
Yeah, right, exactly. So what is it? Okay. So really, really neat stuff here. Let's see. Let's go to, so in Genesis 50, at the end, Joseph shows an understanding of his life situation. So sometimes you're speculating throughout the whole thing. Well, is Joseph cool and calm? Is Joseph courageous? Is he fearful? What's he thinking about as these life events are happening? How is he actually processing this? Well, so Genesis 50, 19 through 21, it says this. But Joseph said to them, so his brothers, this is after the whole, everything's exposed. Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of God?
This is after his dad just died, right?
Yes, and they thought, that's the only reason we're alive.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, hey, now dad's gone, because dad lived, 17 years in Egypt, I think? Something like that.
I don't remember.
Roughly. It wasn't real long, because he was old when he came. And he lived a little while, and now his dad dies. And they're like, uh-oh, now what's Joseph going to do? We didn't treat him very good. Father's gone.
Now he's going to kill us all.
What's he going to do? Yeah.
So then he says, verse 20, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good.
This isn't the first time he told him that either. He told him that when he first revealed himself to him, right?
Not in these words anyways. What can you look up the passage you're thinking of?
I'll find what I'm looking at.
Because this is definitely at least the most pointed, most blunt.
Oh yeah.
So as for you, you meant evil against me, selling slavery and stuff like that. But God meant it for good. That's a really interesting thing. To what purpose? He says to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So he's thinking about all the nation of Israel, And he wraps up with verse 21. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. He saw the big picture. He saw what God's plan was for his life. The whole reason that Joseph got sold into slavery into Egypt and everything else was to help Israel, the nation.
So this is the verse I was thinking of, Genesis 45:5. This is right when he reveals himself to him. I'm Joseph, your brother, right? Whom you sold into Egypt.
Yeah, remember.
But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life.
Yes, yeah, very good.
So he's revealing hey, this was God's whole plan. Later on, he reminds them, hey, you guys were evil, but God still meant it for good.
Yep.
So anyway, that's what I was thinking of.
That's good. I'm gonna throw that in here and act like I knew it ahead of time.
Okay.
I knew it was something there, but that is really good. I want to remember that for next time I do this. Okay. So that's Psalm 45.
In 45:7, he says, and God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you on the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So even then he's like, I'm here to save the whole family. Now, but then he would have known the promises of God of this future nation of Israel thing is, this is supposed to be a good thing.
Yeah. What was that second verse you said?
45:7.
Oh, 45:7. Okay.
Yeah, so I read 45:5, and then I basically skipped 6, which is for these 2 years of famine in the land, there are still 5 years which remain, and then God sent me here to preserve a posterity for you.
Yeah. So
meaning I'm here to preserve your family.
I was actually
which is also his family
out of another passage, which is interesting that you brought that up. It's really good. So I'm gonna make the same point, but just from a different passage of scripture. So
it helps. I just read that this week.
Oh, that's
nice.
Nice.
Why it was fresh on my head.
Yeah, well, they say humility is telling the full truth, and so it's like, yeah, this is how I. That's good. All right, so we see Joseph's understanding even before I read the other passage. His understanding even in his children's names,
Yeah.
which is really interesting.
Yep.
Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh, he's the older one, the twins, right? But Manasseh means cause to forget. So, in other words, the goodness of everything has made him forget the trials. Ephraim means double fruit. So the idea is God's given him so much more; it's caused him to forget about. He's not bitter. He's not dwelling in the past.
Yeah.
He's
recognized
forgiven.
that the temporary time I spent, what, 2 years in prison?
Oh, it was more than that. It was.
No, I wasn't.
Oh yeah. No, he was in there for a long time.
Well, 2 years after the other guys got out. Was that it?
I just remember it was a long time with the baker and the other dude, the cupbearer guy.
I'll look it up.
They forgot about him.
You keep going. I'll interject at some point.
Yeah, it's fine. So, he had a lot of bad situations there. I wanted to read from Psalm 105 though, and for time's sake, I can cut it down to verses 6 through 25. But Psalm 105, beautiful retelling of Israel's history, and notice, the big thing to notice is God's place for Joseph here. So it says, "O offspring of Abraham, his servant, children of Jacob, his chosen ones. He is the Lord our God. His judgments are in all the earth. He remembers his covenant forever, the word that he commanded for 1,000 generations. The covenant that he made with Abraham, his sworn promise to Isaac, which he confirmed to Jacob as a statute, to Israel as an everlasting covenant, saying, to you I will give the land of Canaan as your portion for an inheritance. When they were few in number, Israel, of little account, and sojourners in it, wandering from nation to nation, from one kingdom to another people, he allowed no one to oppress them. He rebuked kings on their account, saying, touch not my anointed ones, do my prophets no harm. When he summoned a famine on the land and broke all supply of bread, so God made that famine happen, he had sent a man ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. So he took full credit for him going to slavery. Mm-hmm. His feet were hurt with fetters, his neck was put in a collar of iron, until what he had said came to pass. The word of the Lord tested him. The king sent and released him. So that's like a part of the Potiphar's wife thing, tested him. That's part of it. There's more to it than that. The king sent and released him. The ruler of the people set him free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his possessions, to bind his princes at his pleasure and to teach his elders wisdom. Then Israel came to Egypt. Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. And the Lord made his people very fruitful and made them stronger than their foes. He turned their hearts to hate his people, to deal craftily with his servants. So it goes on different things. The whole point of biblical theology is this. The whole thing with Joseph running away and yada, that's good personal application, but what's the whole point? It's to show that God is going to be faithful to his covenant promises. Mm-hmm. So he used Joseph to do it. That was really important for wandering Israel to hear from Moses. Hey guys, God's going to be true to his covenant promises.
Yeah.
So it becomes a huge encouragement for them as they go through it, to remember, as bad as it is, God has a plan. God's working it all out. He's in charge.
Yeah. So 41:1. This is
Genesis, or
yeah. Then it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he stood by the river. So this is 2 years after the other guys got out of prison and forgot about him. Then Pharaoh had a dream, and then they went and got Joseph, and he's like, oh hey, I remember this one guy. I was the only one of them remembered the guy, because the guy had been hung. But I don't know how long Joseph was in prison before that. But we know at least 2 years after, or he was in prison at least 2 years. But before that point, I don't know.
It might have been 7 before that. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
Anywho,
anyway,
but
this wasn't like 2 weeks either way. I mean, this was a while, long enough that your buddy got out and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you." I mean, after 2 years, you'd be like, "I think you forgot." I guess wrapping this up then, and making some application of it. So, really, it's just biblical theology is just having the full big picture of the entire Bible, start to finish. How does all this stuff fit together? Everything does fit together. There is a point to the Bible,
right?
Start to finish. Obviously, the main central theme of the Bible is really how God has reconciled us back to himself. You know, Jesus is the scarlet thread of salvation that is weaved all the way through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. And so every story in there fits into that narrative,
Right.
And the bigger picture and what is being taught. Yeah. So just keeping that in mind as you're reading through. So in this case, like you brought out, there's some applications to draw out of the story of Joseph. He was a good guy who did the right thing in a lot of tough situations, and we can make application of that. You know, we can model our lives even after how some of the things are done. You know, we're mistreated, still work hard. You know, if you're tempted, run away. I mean, these are good things to learn, but that's not the central point of the story. The central point of the story is God has a plan. And he did this in Joseph's life to make his plan happen. You know, getting sold into slavery by their brothers saved his entire father's family and really laid the groundwork for a nation to be born inside of another nation, which eventually then left in the Exodus. And you have the whole thing with Moses and coming on after that.
I think a good safeguard when you're doing Bible study, make sure you're doing it right, is, you know, let's say I come to a narrative like Joseph, because I'll pick another example, but I don't want to get started on something else. And so the idea is like, okay, I think I understand this narrative, but I don't really, unless I know why it's here in between this and that, like whatever's before and after it.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of figure out like the whole chronology of the Bible, you know, in a sense. And so then you'd understand like, okay, this next portion is actually important because it shows or teaches or whatever. Yeah. And then goes the next. It should have a flow to it. And the trouble we get is when you have like David and Goliath, and it's like, well, why is this battle taking place? What, you know, what's going on?
So little micro things inside of the bigger picture. So
lots of times we take those little narratives, like the little sub narrative, and we make it the thing, and it's a little out of order. And so, we can do, there's lots of that you can do that with it, but you always need to teach people what's going on around it, why that's there.
Yeah. And whatever you think the interpretation is, it can't contradict the major narrative, right?
Right.
Because it won't. And so if you're like, hey, this is my application, but it stands in the face of what the rest of the Bible teaches, well, you clearly didn't get it right. So go back and start over.
Yeah.
So, all right. No, that makes sense. Let's wrap this up. That was Spoke number 5, and we will be back shortly with Spoke number 6.
Dun, dun, dun. All right.
Okay.